started. And at that event, actually, we didn't know when actually we hosted the event. We didn't know about such bad things are going to happen, right? And at that event, we agreed with the guys from Elastic to organize such kind of events periodically. But unfortunately, actually, the pandemic broke our plans. But fortunately, and finally, actually, we are able to meet in person now. We at Dynina actually use different products from Elastic for different purposes, mostly for full text search, for security purpose, as well as the log management. So that's why we are really happy to host this event. And yeah, and actually very eager to listen the greatest and the news from Elastic. This is it from my side, and yeah, and invite Stuart. Please welcome him. Yeah, he will tell us about something interesting, right?
Really nice to see these telephone boxes from Britain. That's making me feel very welcome, so thank you. Why we're here to talk about what's new in Elastic 8. I think Elastic 8 is such an amazing series of releases. Speaking to our customers, they have found that this is the series that's made it so much easier to use Elastic. It's really focusing on the developer experience. It's focusing on making it easier to take data in to Elastic, making it easier to analyze the data, and making it easier to integrate it with your workflow. As well as making it easier to bring the data in, we're focusing on having Elastic being a central place for all your cloud data and your on-prem data. So let's get straight into what is new. The first thing we'll look at is AWS serverless log ingestion. This is a really nice way, if you're working with AWS, to get your data into Elastic. Simply go to the serverless app repository, put in your credentials, point it towards your Elasticsearch instance, and you can have something like this, a nice cloud-native architecture, where you can bring your data from different AWS services, store it in S3, then use SQS to trigger your serverless forwarder and put it straight into the Elastic Cloud. Now, I was wondering, how many people here are currently using Elastic? Could you put your hand up if you're using Elastic in production, in development? Okay, pretty good. And could you keep it up if you're using 7.17? Okay, 8.1, 2, okay, so 8.1, pretty good. So we're going to get into 8.1. I think we're now on 8.5, and this is where the magic is starting. So it's great that we've got some people on 8. I think that the 8 series is a great place to move to from 7 because the improvements are huge. And if you're new to Elastic, if you've not seen it before, the 8s are a great place to start. One of the key benefits of Elasticsearch is bringing data from multiple places. And one of the ways that we can get a lot of value from that data is by using machine learning models. Straight out of the box, we can start to have a machine learning model to look at your logs over time and see when a particular service has an unusual amount of action happening to it. And this is better than just using something like a threshold, because thresholds can be a little bit too blunt. It is natural for your service to have ebbs and flows. And machine learning can help us to model that and to understand it. But sometimes you want more than what comes out of the box. So with this, we can start to add in our own machine learning models that we've made ourselves in Elastic and ones that we've ingested. Elastic supports machine learning models in the PyTorch format, and we can take something from PyTorch, put it into Elasticsearch, and then have really interesting use cases. For example, running the data that comes into Elasticsearch through entity recognition or through a sentiment analysis. One of the great things about 8 is our support for Fleet. So how many people are using Fleet here? Okay, so I would say we've got about 4. Are the other people using Beats? Okay, now Beats, this is the classic way to use it. Fleet and Agent take this one step forward. So we can imagine Agent is like a wrapper around your beats, containing things like packet beat or file beat, and then being orchestrated and managed by a Fleet server. So we have one central place where we can define how we want to monitor, for example, our Linux instances, how we want to monitor our Windows machines. And then we can easily bring out multiple changes through a whole fleet, a whole set of different machines. By moving machine learning into here as well, you can see some really nice jobs that we can have. So machine learning domain generated algorithm. What this is a long way to say, we want to know if we have a host which is making a call to an IP address, is that a real IP address, or did they just make it up? Because if they just made it up, it could be a security risk. They could be using and exploiting DNS to steal our data. So that previous machine learning job, that helps us find it. Problem child is a really nicely named machine learning job. And this looks at, typically, what kind of processes spawn child processes. It's very normal sometimes for this to happen, but it's not very normal for an Excel spreadsheet to start running a process that connects to the internet. This is a bit strange, and maybe something that we want to know about. Now, I'm talking about 8, and if you're on 7, you'll wonder, well, how easy is it to upgrade? With the upgrade assistant, we're making it very easy. You really have one place to go, which is going to look at your deployment, see if there's anything which is needing to change, if any of the API calls need to change, if your indexes need to change, and point them out to you so you can have a smooth migration from 7.17 into 8. Now let's look at 8.1. So as well as using AWS Lambda to get data into Elastic, we can also use Elastic to monitor Lambda functions. This is another step into having a complete view of all your cloud services. Now, you may have noticed we got beta in the corner. Some of the things I'll show you are not going to be generally available. And there's a bit of controversy amongst solution architects like me in Elastic. Some of them say, we really shouldn't show these things because they're not ready for production. But I don't agree with that. I think it's good to show the beta features because we want to get feedback from our customers, and then our customers can get involved in the product development. There are some of the things here that I've shown, that I will show to you, that have come up with conversations with my customers last year, and they spoke about it. They said, we need this to really change. We spoke to our PMs, and now we have it in the product. So I think Elastic is still small enough, and you can get close enough that you can start to influence the product and really shape it according to what you need. Let's look at Elastic 8.1 security. One of the key things in security is we want to create lots of rules to understand our system. Have we got any security users here? Anyone? So you're working in a SOC, okay? So you're probably using a lot of rules, and maybe you've created some ones for your own environment, some ones specific to your machines, but you may find, actually, we're getting a lot of false positives here. We need to relax this rule a little bit. But you don't really want to change 20 different rules at one time. So here we can bulk edit them. This is a great example of how the 8 series in Elastic makes our lives easier. Now, when the rules get triggered, we now have a way to group them. So we can start to find, okay, let's have a look at all the rules about different processes. Let's join them together by different categories. And it makes it easier if we've got a lot of things happening to be able to sort through them and understand them. Elastic 8.2, observability. I really like things that are nice and simple, and Azure VM extension is very nice and simple. If you get the Elastic Cloud on Azure and you get it through the marketplace, you can now have a native integration. So you just go there, you can see the Azure VM page. You can just set your Elasticsearch cluster to be the place where you want to send your logs, and they will go straight in. So this is a very nice and convenient feature. Compressed spans. This is all about APM. Do we have anyone using APM here? No APM users. Okay, application performance monitoring. We can use Elastic for that. We can have an application in Python, in Java, or PHP, and we can start to understand it. A span is like a journey of a piece of programming logic. So we have an application in Python. It makes a call to a database. It gets some information. It may send it to another service. The span links all these different calls together with metadata so we can see the journey of our information. But some of these calls are a little bit repetitive. If we look at the one on the left, we may have multiple calls to a cache, call after call, just getting data from a database, which is visually confusing, and really it's not a good use of space. So by compressing it and having a summary, we can get a more efficient use of our APM data. This is the one that I mentioned. Last year I was talking to a customer about APM, and they said, you know, this looks really good. We really like the way that we can view our services. We like our service map. We like how you're explaining things. But I don't want the people in this development team to see what's happening here. It's not relevant to them. So what we have here is a way to create, you could say, Elastic Observability in Elastic Observability, to be able to create a separate space in the product where you can only see the data that's relevant to you. And we use Elastic Role-Based Access Control, so you only see the data that you're allowed to see. In this way, we can get a very nice separation of things that need to be separate. For example, testers can see test data, QA can see QA data, but then maybe we have admins who need to see everything. Kibana Spaces in APM helps us achieve that. Elastic 8.2 security. I don't know about this one, and the reason I'm shaking my head is that last week I got caught by this. Someone in our security team thought it was hilarious that I had triggered one of these rules, and on Slack they put a message saying, Stuart has been busy again. And I was thinking, my manager is seeing this message, and anomaly detection rule has been triggered because I'm busy. It's not anomalous for me to be busy. The anomaly was I was hacking AWS and playing with security groups. So I've seen the power of this. It's good. Everyone in security, into security, thinks this is the coolest one. It was beta then. It's now GA. It's got even better. What this does is it lets you see what an adversary is up to on your host. You can see the exact commands that they're running. You can see what triggered an alert and what didn't. And this is, I think, giving a really nice sensation of kind of sitting over the attacker's shoulder and seeing what they're up to. So this is a really nice way to visualize the data and to understand it. It says beta, but it's now become GA. And we'll see how it's improved in a few slides. So most of these things have been about security and observability. To me, they're the most exciting. But platform sometimes gets exciting, and this is extremely good. So cross-cluster replication, if you don't know it, is what it says. We get data and we replicate it to another Elastic cluster. This could be very useful for disaster recovery and high availability. The same mechanism enables us to do a search across multiple clusters as if they were just one. This could be very useful if you have a use case where you need to keep your data in one geographic place for the most time, but you also need admins to understand how all these clusters are working together. So cross-cluster search, cross-cluster replication is a really powerful way to join up your clusters and have more flexible architectures. 8.3, observability. Now, here we've got some more integrations, and I would just explain a little bit more about integrations. So when you go to Elastic, Kibana, we have an integrations page, and you can select a different integration. But what does that actually mean? What it means is that out of the box, the integration comes with a way to take data from your data source. It comes with a way to normalize that data, so that if you take data from an Apache web server and from an AWS firewall, they have the same field for the IP address, and it's easy to correlate and search across them. As well as that, we also have visualizations. So by getting an integration, you can take your data, normalize it, and visualize it. And here are the latest ones that we added. Elastic 8.3 security. This is another nice way that we have made the product a little bit easier to use by grouping the detections that we've found, the alerts that we've found are being grouped here, and we can see what kind of responses we have. We can take our alerts and we can raise them as cases, and here we can see which ones are being looked at and which ones are being closed. And we can also group them by suspicious users, not me, and hosts as well. This is really nice. Sometimes we find an alert in security, and we have documented what you can do next. We've taken the knowledge of our threat hunting lab, which we'll talk about later, and we've added it into the product. So if you find some new vulnerability, some new indicator of compromise, you can look at this, and it could guide you onto what may have happened and how you can remedy that situation. 8.4, observability. So we don't have anyone using APM, but if you were to use APM, there's two ways you could do it. You could use Elastic's agent to instrument your applications, or you could use an open standard called Open Telemetry. This may be useful if you like to use standardized tools, if you're already using Open Telemetry, for example, in Prometheus, or if you're concerned with vendor lock-in. Now, this is more moving towards the cloud, focusing on the cloud-native tools such as Kubernetes. Now, you may know we can run Elastic on Kubernetes, but now we can also monitor our Kubernetes hosts. We can see what kind of nodes we have, where the pods are, and how these nodes are performing. Now, 8.4 security. This is now GA. This is moving deeper into Kubernetes, deeper into the cloud. And what this is Kubernetes security posture management. If you've used a tool like Fugue or Aquasec, this is very similar. What we're doing is looking at your Kubernetes cluster and checking how it's been set up, checking its configuration. You've probably heard some statistics like around 75% of all successful cloud attacks have come from misconfigured services. So what we're looking at here is how you set up your Kubernetes cluster and assessing that against CIS benchmarks. And now 8.5, the final release. 8.5 observability goes even deeper into Kubernetes. So now if we have any APM problems, we can also see, could they be associated with our Kubernetes cluster? Could there be a problem with a certain number of pods that are influencing the problem here, or is it more an application level problem? I don't know too much about .NET, but one of our customers has said that this is a lifesaver, that other ways to instrument .NET applications with APM are extremely intrusive, and this is an auto-instrumentation, no change to the underlying code, and apparently this is a massive help. So another tech preview, we can look at the metrics from Lambda as well. So now we're getting a complete view of Lambda. We're looking at the logs and we're seeing how well it performs. And 8.5 security. Now, we've got an alert, something's gone wrong, and now we can start to create a case and assign it to someone. So we found one of those alerts. Perhaps there was a suspicious child process. Perhaps there was some unusual activity on the network. Here we can create a case and assign it to one of our team members. But we could also link out to something like Jira or Swimlane as well. So you can connect to an external system, or you can manage it in Elastic. So some of these entities, like certain people, are associated with lots of different problems. So here you can see how it's grouped, for example, by different machines or different people. So when you get an alert, you can learn a little bit more about where it came from. So this is the terminal output, and we've gone a little deeper here and made it even better. So here you can see exactly what's happening, and then we can get even more information about what they were really up to and get their viewpoint of it in this really cool terminal viewpoint. The final thing I would say before I finish this part of the presentation is that as well as creating a product, a security product which is extremely cool, we also have something called Elastic Security Labs, where we have a team of full-time researchers looking into different security threats. I believe they were the first researchers to find one of the blister malware variants, and yesterday they published a 2022 threat report. So if you're interested in security, I'd really advise you to check this out. It's extremely cool and very informative. So before I go and look at the product, I wondered if anyone had any questions at all, and then maybe we can look at the product and answer those questions. No questions? Okay. Yes. Yes. It's from the different applications. So they would be hosted on Kubernetes, but you're looking at the applications running on the different pods and how they interact. Yes. Oh no, it could be everything. It could these hosts. It could be VMs. It could be applications running on VMs. It's not just Kubernetes. It's all about having applications and instrumenting them, adding metadata to their calls, and then creating a trace. So that could be applications running on bare metal or VMs, as well as Kubernetes.
Yeah, because I saw your integration, documentation integration with ServiceNow.
Yes.
And I think maybe you have some tagging configuration, so we can get some tag from service offering from ITSM.
Yes.
And then we have, so can your product be used to discover CIs in ITSM? For example, your agent.
Sorry, to discover what?
To discover configuration items in ITSM, to have bidirectional integration with ITSM.
I don't know enough about that to say. If we can get logs from that system, we can bring them in, but to create a bidirectional relationship would be a bit of custom work if you're sending data back into it.
That would be great.
Yep. Yes. Definitely. So you can see what you're looking at is basically, imagine if you scrolled up on your console, you would see the sequence of commands that the attacker has run. Yes. 8.5. That came out 2 weeks ago. Okay, let's have a little bit of a look at some of the product. So this is our security alerts page. You can see the different alerts have been classified here, and we can go in here and learn more about them. We can click here, open this up, find out some more information. We could find out if there's any cases related to this. We could start to think, actually, there's some really dodgy users in this estate. Some of them keep triggering things in AWS, so they might have a high user risk score. Or it could be a particular host which has unusual activities happening. So we can add the data here so you can get more insight. Imagine you found some problem in a host. We can also take action here. We can click here and add to a case, add an exception, and because it's a demo, they're not letting me show this, but we can also start to isolate the host and stop it from communicating to the network so there's no lateral movement possible. This is what the cloud posture page looks like. You may remember we said that with the cloud posture application, we're looking at our Kubernetes assets, and we can do this for vanilla Kubernetes, we can do this for EKS on AWS, and we can see how compliant they are against the benchmarks. We can look here and find a problem. And not only will it say, well, this is the part of the benchmark that has failed, this is the problem, it's going to give us some remediation actions. It will tell us what we can do about this and how we can fix it. And looking at some more Kubernetes viewpoints, we can see the different clusters, the different namespaces, get a view of the logical setup, see the container images, and understand our infrastructure as well. We can see the detection and response page, see the different cases, and see different alerts that have happened. And then we can click on this and do things like analyzing them and seeing more information about them. One of the cool things we can do in security is to create a timeline to kind of tell a story from the data. So let's have a look at some of these. Here we can see the blister malware one, created with Times. Times is one of our integrations, which is a SOR integration. What we can see here is we've taken data from that, and we've enriched it with these annotations. So something which could be a little bit complicated if you're just seeing lots of discrete events, we can now tell the story of what's happened. And we can see curl going here, triggering a network threat, and sending data to Brazil, which is not where we're expecting it to be. And we can get quite a clear view of what's gone wrong there. So this is, the global threat report. If you're interested in this, I really recommend downloading it. Lots of really interesting and original information there. And one question that can come up quite a lot, if you deploy this to the cloud, well, how can we secure it? How can we make sure that we don't have anything exposed publicly? And what we can do here for our cloud deployments is to add traffic filters here. So Elastic's very secure and has kicked me out. If it asks for two-factor authentication, I'll have a problem. Okay. So we can go here and add traffic filters. So this is a nice way to either allow list different addresses to say that only things in this CIDR range are what we want to take data from, or we could create a different connection. We could create, for example, a VNet connection and a private link to say we want to connect these two VPCs and we don't want any traffic on the public internet. So we've spoken about 8, how we've made it easier to get started with data, to bring data in and analyze it across different sources. We looked at some of the ways we can make machine learning easier to use, some of the ways we can integrate that with a threat hunting and observability workflow. And we've also looked at our security information and how we can really use the visual power of Kibana to get a better idea of what attackers are doing, to visualize their behavior, and to use a console view to really understand what they're doing in a kind of live action way. So these are some of my favorite features in the latest version of Elastic 8. I hope that you're interested in this. I would really like anyone who wants to give this a try to start using Elastic Cloud. We can have a free trial, no credit card needed. My colleague Jacob loves to extend cloud trials. So you're very welcome to try that and see what you think about it. So that's what I wanted to show you. Do we have any more questions before we wrap up?
If you want to ask a question, I have a box for you. So don't start speaking before you don't have the box.
And also, if you don't want to ask your question in front of everyone, please catch me afterwards and we can just have that question then, or you can email me any questions.
The question is about how is Elastic integrated with AWS CloudWatch? Should I create and install Elasticsearch as a different service, and how I can get logs and analyze from CloudWatch in Kibana? I mean,
Definitely. You could have an agent. Elastic Agent could be running on a VM, or it could be running in Kibana, and that agent can make calls to CloudWatch. But I think probably the most efficient way is to use, you may have missed that actually, we had a slide about it, but we have Elastic Serverless Forwarder. So we have a Lambda function that can get these logs from CloudWatch, and then every time there's a new log, it will trigger the function and send that into the Elasticsearch service. So that's probably the best way in AWS to get data from CloudWatch.
So everyone's saying, saving up questions for personal
Okay, that's absolutely fine.
conversations, I guess.
Okay.
I wasn't talking about the CloudWatch. How much time does it take to be logged into Elasticsearch?
Yeah, we can set the kind of the schedule for how often we want to check that. If it's too high, you may get kind of too much traffic, but the default, it would take about a minute to kind of go through all of that and see it. Okay. Okay, I think that's everything for the questions. Thank you very much, and please do see me after the talk if you have any more. Thank you.
All right, so there are two news. One is good one and one is bad one. I'm going to start with a bad one that we unfortunately don't have the second speaker, but the good news is that we have a lot of snacks. We have beer, right? we have drinks. We have such a cool crowd here with so many interesting people, and I'm sure you can also get in touch with the speaker and just mingle and have fun. We have time until 9 in the evening, so yep, mingle and have fun.